The planet Virene was a world of glowing skies and twin suns. Its capital city, Aerthra, was built from silver stone that shone in the light. The people of Virene were tall and graceful, their skin reflecting faint colors that changed with emotion. They were proud of their strength, their long history, and their mastery of energy and war. No other race had ever made them bow. That was why the visit from the humans caused such excitement. The humans had arrived in peace. Their ship, a gray and blue vessel from Earth, landed near the grand arena. From it stepped a small group of diplomats and soldiers. Among them was a young soldier named Rian. He was strong but quiet, his brown eyes calm even when others mocked him. He was not a leader, but he was known among his people for his discipline and courage. The humans came to speak of an alliance between Earth and Virene. They believed that trade and friendship could help both worlds. But many of the Virene nobles thought otherwise. They believed humans were weak creatures who depended too much on their machines and armor. Among those who doubted humans was the princess of Virene, Alara. She was 19 years old, proud and full of fire. She had been trained in combat since childhood and had never been defeated. When she heard that humans had come to her world to seek peace, she laughed. She said no alliance could be made with those who could not even survive without metal skin. Her words spread across the city until they reached the ears of the human delegation. Ryan heard the rumor but said nothing. His commander warned him that the Virene respected strength above all else, and that sometimes strength was shown not by fighting but by restraint. But fate had another plan. The next day, the Council of Virene invited the humans to the grand arena. Thousands gathered in the stands. The twin suns burned bright overhead. The air shimmered with heat. It was not a meeting of peace. It was a test. The princess stood in the center of the arena, dressed in silver armor that sparkled like light. She raised her hand and pointed toward the humans. Her voice rang through the air, sharp and proud. She asked which of them dared stand before her. Rian stepped forward. He carried the standard armor of the Earth Defense Corps, strong and polished, built for protection and mobility. The crowd murmured at the sight of the human soldier. Alara's eyes glowed with challenge. She asked if humans were born inside their armor because she had never seen one walk without it. Her words caused laughter to spread among the audience. The alien nobles enjoyed the show, thinking the human would lose his pride before the day ended. Rian said nothing at first. He looked around at the crowd and then at the princess. Her confidence did not anger him. He had seen such pride before on other worlds. He understood it, but he also knew that peace could not be built on words alone. He had to show them something no machine could give. The princess took a step closer. Her silver eyes narrowed as she continued to mock him. She said that if humans truly believed in courage, they should face the world with their own skin, not hide behind iron. The laughter grew louder. Rian placed his hand on his helmet and unlocked it. The sound of the seal breaking echoed in the arena. The crowd fell silent as he lifted the helmet away. His short dark hair glinted in the sunlight, and his face showed no fear. The princess frowned, unsure of what he was doing. Then he removed his chest plate, his arm guards, and his leg armor. Piece by piece, he set them on the ground until he stood wearing only the light uniform beneath. The air was hot and heavy, and sweat already began to form on his skin. The alien crowd whispered among themselves. Some were shocked. Others were amused. The princess smiled again and asked if he was surrendering. Ryan looked at her and said that humans did not surrender when challenged. He said that sometimes to understand one another, pride had to be left behind. The princess raised her chin. She said that if he truly wished to prove human courage, then he must walk across the burning path. The burning path was the floor of the arena itself, made from red sand that absorbed the sun's heat until it glowed faintly. No one could walk across it unprotected. Even the Virene wore boots made from heat-resistant metal. Ryan nodded once. His commander tried to speak, but he raised his hand to stop him. The crowd grew silent again. Alara crossed her arms, expecting him to refuse. Instead, he began to walk toward the start of the burning path. As he stood at the edge, he looked at the twin suns above. The heat pressed against his skin like a living force. He could feel the ground pulsing under his feet. Yet his heart was steady. He had faced storms, fire, and war. This was only another test. The princess announced that if he crossed the entire arena, she would admit that humans had courage. If he failed, the humans would leave Virene in shame. The people cheered at the terms. Ryan only nodded and took his first step, The heat was instant and fierce. The air rippled and the sand beneath his boots began to smoke. Each step felt like fire crawling up his legs. The crowd leaned forward, whispering that he would not last long, but Rian did not stop. His steps were slow but firm. He focused on breathing, keeping his eyes on the far side of the arena. The memory of Earth came to him, the blue sky, the green hills, and the people who believed in him. He remembered their hope that humans could be something more than conquerors, that they could inspire others through courage. He walked on. The smell of burning filled the air. The princess watched, her smile fading as the human continued. She saw the pain on his face, but also saw his eyes calm and determined. For the first time, she began to feel unsure. By the time Ryan reached the middle of the arena, his boots were blackened, and the ground glowed red beneath him. The guard stepped forward, thinking he might collapse, but he raised his hand, signaling them to stay back. The crowd grew silent again. All they could hear was the faint crackle of the burning sand and the steady sound of his steps. When Rian reached the other side, he stopped. His legs trembled and sweat ran down his face, but he stood tall. He turned to face the princess and bowed his head slightly. The crowd erupted in noise. Some cheered. Others could not believe what they had seen. The princess stood frozen, her pride struggling against her surprise. No one had expected the human to survive, let alone finish. Rian looked at her calmly. He said that humans may wear armor, but it does not make them strong. What makes them strong is the heart that chooses to stand when the world tells them to fall. The arena fell silent again. Even the princess did not speak. The fire of her pride was still there, but beneath it, a spark of respect began to grow. The human soldier walked away from the burning path without looking back. Behind him, the people of Vereen whispered among themselves. For the first time, they wondered if the stories about human courage were true. The challenge had ended, but something far greater had begun. The arena still echoed with the sound of the crowd long after Ryan's walk was over. The heat had burned the air and the smell of scorched sand lingered. Many of the Vereen could not believe what they had witnessed. Some called it foolishness, while others whispered that it was courage unlike any they had seen. Rian's legs trembled as he stepped out of the arena. His uniform was darkened from heat and his boots were nearly ruined. The medics moved toward him, but he shook his head. He said he would be fine. His commander looked at him with pride but also concern. The humans had come for peace, not to fight or to show power. Yet what Ryan had done spoke louder than any speech could. Inside the royal balcony, Princess Alara stood silent. Her eyes followed the human soldier as he left. Her guards waited for her orders, but she said nothing. For the first time in her life, she had seen someone from another world face her challenge without fear. It made her feel something unfamiliar, a mix of respect and confusion. The arena slowly emptied, but the story of the human's walk spread across the city like fire. Everywhere, people spoke of the soldier who removed his armor and walked across the burning path. Children repeated the tale in the streets, and merchants discussed it in the markets. The proud warriors of Vereen argued among themselves. Some said the human was lucky, others said he was strong, and a few began to wonder if the humans were not as weak as they once thought. That evening, Alara sat in her private chamber. The silver moon of Vereen shone through the tall crystal windows. She could still see the human's calm eyes in her mind. Her advisor entered the room and bowed deeply. He said that the council wished to use the event as proof that humans were reckless and foolish. Alara nodded but said little. She did not tell him that the image of Ryan standing in the burning sand would not leave her thoughts. Ryan, meanwhile, sat in the small medical room of the human camp. His feet were bandaged and his uniform had been replaced. The air smelled of medicine and metal. His commander, an older man named Terran, stood beside him and asked why he had taken such a risk. Ryan replied that sometimes peace required more than words. He said that if he had refused, the Vereen would never have listened to the humans again. Terran sighed but smiled slightly. He told Rian that the Vereen respected strength, and that he had given them something they could never forget. Still, he warned him that what he did would draw attention from the council, and not all of it would be kind. Ryan nodded, knowing it was true. The next day, a message came from the royal palace. The princess requested to meet the human soldier privately. Many of the humans in the camp were surprised. Some thought it was a trap, but Ryan believed otherwise. He agreed to go, saying that he had nothing to hide. When he entered the palace, he was met by tall guards wearing silver armor. They led him through long halls filled with shining walls and soft lights. At the end stood Princess Alara, dressed in a flowing robe of blue and white. Her expression was calm, but her eyes were sharp with curiosity. She began by asking why he had done it. Ryan answered simply that humans do not walk away from challenges when their honor is questioned. Alara said that honor could not protect a man from fire. He smiled slightly and said that sometimes courage was not about winning, but about refusing to give up. The princess studied him quietly. She asked what gave humans such strength, even when they were weaker than others. Ryan said it came from their spirit and their belief that every life had meaning, no matter how small. Alara turned away for a moment, thinking about his words. She told him that her people believed strength was everything. Without it, one was nothing. Ryan replied that true strength was not only in the body but in the heart that could endure pain and still move forward. The princess said she had never heard anyone speak like that before. Their conversation lasted long into the evening. The guards watched in silence as the two spoke not as enemies but as people trying to understand one another. When Ryan finally left the palace, Alara remained by the window, looking out toward the stars. For the first time, she wondered what kind of world could raise people like him. Days passed and the story of the human's walk continued to spread. The Virene people began to argue less about whether he was foolish or brave. Most had begun to see him as a symbol of something rare. In the streets, artists painted his image, and storytellers recited the tale of the unarmored human who walked through fire. The council, however, was uneasy. They feared that the growing admiration for the human would weaken their control. Some members believed the humans were using tricks to gain influence. Others demanded that the humans be sent back to their world before they stirred more trouble. One evening, the princess stood before the council to speak. The elders sat in a circle of light, their faces cold and serious. They asked her if she had been meeting the human in secret. Alara did not deny it. She said she wanted to learn about the humans because understanding was the first step toward peace. The council warned her that such contact was dangerous. They said that humans could not be trusted, that they were new to the stars and did not know their place. Alara looked at them with steady eyes and said that she would decide for herself what humans were capable of. The council ended the meeting in anger. But outside the chamber, young soldiers and common citizens whispered in her favor. They admired her for standing up to the council. Slowly, without meaning to, the princess and the human had become symbols of change. Back in the human camp, Ryan received messages from Earth. His actions had reached far beyond Virene. Some praised him for his courage. Others feared that his act might lead to conflict if misunderstood. He read the messages quietly and then put them away. He believed that his walk had not been for glory or fame. It had been a message that humanity was not to be judged by armor or weapons, but by the will to endure. That night he stood outside his tent and looked at the two moons of Virene. The wind was warm, carrying the scent of metal and sand. He thought of the princess and her fierce eyes. He hoped she had seen in him what he wished to show the whole galaxy, that humans were not weak, only different. At the same time, in her high tower, Alara looked up at the same moons. Her heart felt restless. She had always believed her people were the strongest in the galaxy, yet now she was not sure. The image of the human walking through fire returned again and again. She realized that what she had seen that day was not pride or defiance, but something deeper. The fire that had once filled her pride was now turning into curiosity and respect. She did not yet know it, but the walk of one human soldier had already begun to change her world. The palace of Virene stood high above the shining city. Its towers reflected the light of the twin suns, and its walls were made from white crystal that hummed softly with energy. Inside those halls, Princess Alara walked in silence. The events of the arena still played in her mind. She had mocked the human and expected him to fall, yet he had done what no one from her world could imagine. She entered the chamber of mirrors, where royal members often came to think. The walls showed reflections that shifted like water. As she stared at her reflection, she did not see the proud princess she once knew. She saw doubt in her own eyes. For the first time, she was not sure what strength truly meant. A soft knock came at the door. Her guard announced that the human soldier had requested an audience. Alara agreed at once. She wanted answers to the questions that had filled her thoughts for days. When Ryan entered, he was dressed in a clean uniform, simple and without armor. The burns on his hands were healing, but his eyes were as calm as ever. Alara asked him to sit. The air in the room was quiet except for the faint hum of the mirrors. She began to speak, her voice softer than before. She asked him why he had risked his life for something as small as pride. Ryan smiled lightly and said that it had not been about pride. He said that sometimes peace needed to be shown, not spoken. He told her that if he had refused her challenge, her people would never believe humans could face them as equals. Alara listened carefully. She had always believed that power was the only language worth speaking, but this human spoke of peace as if it were stronger than weapons. She told him that on Vereen weakness was not forgiven. To survive, one had to show dominance. Ryan nodded and said that humans also learned to fight, but they fought to protect, not to rule. She frowned slightly and asked him if all humans thought like that. Ryan said not all, but many tried. He spoke about Earth, about the wars humans had fought among themselves, and how they had learned that the greatest victory was the one where no one had to die. Alara was quiet for a long time. She looked at her own hands and wondered if her people could ever think like that. She asked him if he had been afraid when he walked through the burning path. Ryan looked at her and said that fear was always there. But courage was what one chose to do despite it. The princess repeated his words in a whisper, thinking deeply. As they spoke, the light in the mirrors began to shift. The reflections of their faces glowed softly, showing two very different beings trying to understand one another. Alara realized that Ryan did not come from a world of power like hers, yet his strength felt more real than any she had seen. Outside the palace, the people of Vereen continued to talk about the human. Some said he was blessed by the gods, others said he was mad. But among the younger generation, admiration began to grow. They spoke of courage without armor and strength without cruelty. The elders of the council noticed this change and grew restless. One night, while Ryan was still in the palace, a group of council members met in secret. They agreed that the influence of the human was becoming dangerous. They feared that his presence would weaken the order they had kept for centuries. They planned to send him back to his ship and order the humans to leave their planet. Unaware of this, Ryan and Alara continued their talks. Each day they met in different parts of the palace gardens. The gardens were filled with tall trees that shimmered with silver leaves. The air smelled of flowers that glowed faintly under the suns. Ryan enjoyed walking there, listening to the sound of the wind. During one of their walks, Alara stopped beside a pond. The water was still and clear, reflecting both of them. She asked Ryan what humans saw when they looked at their own reflection. He said that humans saw not what they were, but what they hoped to become. She looked at her reflection and said that Vereen people only saw what they already were. His words stayed with her. Later that night, she sat by her window, thinking about how her people measured worth. They believed that strength was shown by power, not by compassion. But now she wondered if that belief had blinded them. The next day, she called her guards and told them to release some of the lower workers who had been punished unfairly by the council. When they asked why, she said that justice must come before power. The guards were surprised but obeyed. Her actions caused whispers throughout the palace. Many said the human had changed her mind. When the council heard of it, they were furious. They confronted her in the council chamber, demanding to know why she had broken tradition. She stood before them calmly and said that traditions meant nothing if they made people suffer. One elder shouted that her words were a sign of weakness. She replied that if compassion was weakness, then perhaps weakness was stronger than they thought. The elders warned her that the human was filling her head with dangerous ideas. They demanded that she end contact with him at once. Alara refused. She said that she would speak with whoever she wished, and that no council had the right to silence curiosity. Ryan learned of the meeting later that evening. He thanked her for standing up for him, but he also warned her that challenging her own council could put her in danger. She smiled slightly and said that danger was nothing new to her. She had faced many threats in her life, but none had made her question herself like this one. As they stood under the glowing trees of the garden, Ryan told her something that stayed in her heart. He said that every great change began with someone who dared to listen instead of fight. She looked at him and said that perhaps his walk through the fire had been more than a test of endurance. Perhaps it had been the start of something far greater. The next morning, rumors spread across Vereen that the princess had begun to favor human ways. Some nobles mocked her, saying she had fallen under human influence. Others began to admire her courage for defying the council. The city was no longer calm. There were debates in every street and hall. The humans in their camp watched the changes with caution. Ryan's commander warned that the situation was becoming unstable. He suggested they prepare to leave if things turned hostile. But Ryan believed they should stay. He said that if they left now, all the understanding they had built would vanish. That night, Alara went to the highest balcony of the palace. From there, she could see the lights of the human camp far away. She thought about Ryan's words and about the walk that had begun everything. She realized that her people's pride had kept them from seeing the truth. The human had shown her that real power came not from ruling others but from mastering oneself. A gentle wind passed through her hair as she looked up at the stars. Somewhere among them was Earth, a small world filled with people who refused to give up no matter how many times they fell. She smiled faintly, knowing that her world was about to change forever. The lesson had begun, and neither she nor Ryan could stop what was coming next. The city of Airthra was no longer calm. The story of the human soldier and the princess had spread to every corner of the planet. Across villages and cities, people whispered about courage without armor and kindness stronger than pride. Songs were written about the human who had walked through fire, and many began to question what their leaders had always taught them. In the royal palace, tension grew each day. The Council of Virene met in secret rooms, speaking in low voices. They feared that the princess was changing the minds of the people. They accused her of betraying her heritage and of being blinded by human words. The eldest counselor, a man named Sarath, believed that the humans had come to weaken their unity. He warned that if the princess was not stopped, the balance of power would fall apart. Princess Alara, however, no longer cared about their threats. Her talks with Ryan had opened her eyes to a truth she could not ignore. For the first time, she saw the pain of her people, the unfairness of old rules and the emptiness of strength built on fear. She had grown up believing she was born to lead, but now she understood that true leadership was not about command. It was about understanding. Ryan had become a symbol among the people. Every day more Virene came to see him at the human camp. They brought gifts of food and asked to hear his story. He spoke humbly, saying he was no hero, only a man who did what he thought was right. Yet his simple words carried great power. The council began to see him as a threat, not because of his weapons, but because of his influence. One morning, the human camp awoke to the sound of marching boots. Hundreds of Virene guards surrounded them, their silver armor shining under the suns. Their leader announced that by order of the council, the humans were to be confined until further notice. Ryan stepped forward and asked the reason. The guard replied that the humans had caused unrest and that their actions had endangered the peace. Ryan did not resist. He told his men to stay calm and not to draw their weapons. He knew violence would destroy everything he and Alara had worked for. The guard searched the camp, taking communication devices and scanning the ships. The message was clear. The humans were no longer welcome. When Alara learned what had happened, she rushed to the council chamber. The elders sat in their high seats, their faces cold. She demanded to know why they had taken such action. Sarath spoke for the council. He said that the humans had brought chaos to their world, and that their influence must end before it spread further. Alara's voice echoed through the hall as she told them they were blind. She said the humans had done nothing wrong and that the unrest was not caused by them, but by the truth they had shown. She reminded them that Ryan had risked his life to prove his courage, and that he had shown more honor than many of her own people. The council accused her of being under human control. She raised her chin and said that she was under no one's control. She said that she had seen courage, kindness, and honor with her own eyes, and that the council's pride was the true danger to their world. Her words shocked the chamber. Never before had a royal spoken to the council in that way. That night, thousands gathered outside the palace. They shouted the princess's name and demanded justice for the humans. The guards struggled to keep order. The air was filled with the sound of chants and drums. It was not a war, but it was the beginning of something that could no longer be stopped. Ryan remained inside his tent, listening to the noise outside. His commander told him that the situation was turning dangerous, and that they should leave while they still could. Ryan refused. He said that leaving now would mean admitting guilt. He believed that if they stayed calm, the people of Virene would see the truth for themselves. Alara, meanwhile, went to her private chamber and stood by the window. The lights of the crowd below flickered like stars. She felt both fear and pride. She knew the council might try to remove her from power, but she also knew she could not turn back. The walk of the human had changed her heart, and now it was time to change her world. The next morning, the council ordered the arrest of Rian. They sent guards to the human camp with orders to take him by force if needed. The crowd gathered again, shouting in anger. Alara heard the order and rushed to the arena, where the first challenge had taken place. She found Ryan standing calmly among his people, ready to face whatever came. The guards surrounded him. Their weapons glowed with energy, but Ryan did not move. He raised his hands slowly to show he would not resist. Just then, Alara appeared before the crowd. She stepped between the guards and the human soldier. Her voice was clear and strong as she declared that no one would touch him. Sarath and the other council members arrived, shouting for the guards to obey. Alara turned to face them. She said that if they wished to take the human, they would have to take her as well. The crowd gasped. Her words spread through the arena like lightning. The guards hesitated. None of them dared to touch their princess. The people began to chant her name again. The council shouted orders, but their voices were lost in the noise of the crowd. Alara reached for Ryan's arm and raised it high for all to see. She said that this man had walked through fire not for power but for peace, and that any world that could not honor such courage did not deserve to call itself strong. The crowd roared in agreement. Even some of the guards lowered their weapons. Sarath tried to speak, but his words were drowned by the voices of thousands. The uprising had begun. It was not a battle fought with weapons, but with belief. The people had seen what true strength looked like, and they would not forget it. Rian looked at Alara with calm respect. He told her that what she had done was brave but dangerous. She smiled and said that bravery meant nothing if it was never used. Together they faced the crowd, two figures from different worlds standing side by side. By nightfall, the council chamber was silent. Many of the elders fled the city, fearing the anger of the people. Alara took control of the palace, not as a ruler seeking power, but as a leader seeking peace. She ordered that the humans be treated as honored guests and that no one should raise a weapon against them again. Across the city, the people celebrated. Lights filled the streets and songs were sung about the day the princess stood beside the human. Ryan watched from the balcony of the palace. He saw faces filled with hope. He knew the struggle was not over, but he also knew that change had begun. As the night grew quiet, Alara joined him. She looked at the stars above and said that her people had always thought they were the strongest race in the galaxy. But now she understood that strength came in many forms. Ryan replied that humans had learned the same lesson long ago. They stood together in silence, knowing that their actions had created a new path. The world of Virene would never be the same again. The suns of Virene rose slowly over the silver towers of Aerthra. The light touched the city walls and turned them gold. The streets, once filled with fear and anger, were now filled with people working together. Humans and Virene stood side by side, repairing the damage from the unrest. The sound of tools and laughter replaced the noise of shouting crowds. It was a new day, and the world was learning what peace truly meant. Ryan walked through the market with a small group of human engineers. The Virene merchants waved at them, offering fruit and strange glowing crystals. Some still looked cautious, but most smiled warmly. The sight made Ryan feel proud. He had seen many battlefields in his life, but this was the first time he had seen a victory that was not built on destruction. Princess Alara spent her days meeting with her people. She went into the villages that had once feared the humans and listened to their worries. She promised to rebuild trust and to lead with fairness. Her guards followed her everywhere, but she no longer needed them for protection. The people themselves watched over her now. Inside the palace, the council chamber had changed. The high seats of the old councilors were empty. In their place sat a circle of new advisors chosen from both Virene and humans. They worked together to form new laws that would protect both sides. Alara led every meeting with calm strength, and Ryan was often invited to give his thoughts. He was not a ruler or a politician, but his honesty made people listen. The first major task was rebuilding communication between their worlds. The humans had come with advanced technology, but the Virene had energy systems that could power entire cities with a single pulse. When they began to combine their knowledge, Progress moved faster than anyone had imagined. The two races discovered they could create more together than either could alone. Yet peace was not easy. Some Vereen soldiers still believed that humans were dangerous. They remembered the old wars between worlds and did not trust easily. A few even planned secret attacks to remove the humans before they became too strong. But each time they tried, the people themselves stopped them. The citizens no longer obeyed orders born from hate. They had seen too much truth to go back to the past. One evening, Ryan stood on the balcony of the palace looking at the sky. The stars were brighter than before, or maybe he was only seeing them with clearer eyes. Alara joined him holding a small metal box. She told him it contained the last orders of the old council, a command to destroy the human fleet if peace talks failed. She said she had kept it as a reminder of how close they had come to losing everything. Ryan looked at the box for a long moment before saying that the best way to destroy old fear was to build something better in its place. Alara smiled and threw the box into the air. It floated for a second before falling into the deep lake below the palace. The ripples spread across the water, fading slowly into calm circles. Over the next months, the humans helped rebuild the education system of Vereen. They opened schools that taught both languages. Children of both races played together in open fields. The princess often visited those schools. She would sit among the children and tell them stories about the time when a single act of courage changed the hearts of many. The children listened with wide eyes, their imaginations full of hope for a future without war. Ryan became known across the planet as the man who walked unarmed before the princess. His story spread beyond Vereen, reaching human colonies and other alien worlds.
Many who heard it began to believe that peace between races was not just a dream.
Leaders from other worlds sent messages asking for alliances and friendship. What had started as a single act of bravery had begun to reshape the galaxy. Despite the new hope, Ryan sometimes missed home. He would sit alone near the garden of the palace, looking up at the stars where Earth waited. Alara noticed his silence and asked if he wanted to return. He told her he did not know. His mission had brought him far from home, but he had found something here that he never expected. Alara told him that he was free to go whenever he wished, but that his story would always stay in the hearts of her people. She said that the bond between their worlds would remain strong because of him. Ryan smiled and told her that he would return one day, not as a soldier but as a friend. When the first joint council between humans and Vereen was formed, they held a grand ceremony in the arena where everything had begun, the same place where Alara had once taunted him, and where he had taken off his armor to prove his worth now stood as a symbol of unity. Thousands gathered to watch. Alara stepped onto the platform dressed in simple royal robes. Ryan stood beside her wearing no armor, only a light uniform. She raised her hand for silence and spoke to the crowd. She reminded them of the old days of pride and fear, and of how one man had shown them that strength was not about armor or weapons, but about heart and will. She told them that they must continue to walk the path of peace even when it became hard. When she finished, she turned to Ryan. The crowd cheered as he stepped forward to speak. He told them that when he first came to Vereen, he had thought of them as enemies, but now he saw them as friends. He said that courage was not the absence of fear, but the choice to act despite it. His words were simple, but they touched every listener deeply. After the ceremony, fireworks filled the sky. The humans had brought the fireworks from their ships, and the Vereen had added energy crystals that made the explosions bloom into colors no one had ever seen before. The light reflected in Alara's eyes as she stood beside Ryan, and for the first time since the war, both of them felt completely at peace. As the night grew quiet, Alara asked Ryan what he would do next. He said he would help build the new alliance and teach others what he had learned. She nodded and told him that their worlds would walk side by side from now on. When the dawn came again, Ryan stood at the edge of the landing field. His ship was ready for travel, but he looked back one last time. The city was alive with hope. The people waved, shouting blessings and songs of farewell. Alara stood on the palace balcony watching him go. She placed her hand over her heart in respect, and he did the same before walking toward his ship. As the engines lifted him into the sky, the golden light of the suns covered the land below. The once divided world was now united, and high above, in the silence of space, Ryan whispered a promise to himself. He would carry the story of the 19-year-old princess and her courage across the stars, so that every world would know that peace could begin with a single walk.